We've been waiting all day, but finally we've got the full spoilers for chapter 271 of Jujutsu Kaisen. This is the final chapter of the series, so without further delay, let's dive into the spoilers for this highly anticipated chapter. The chapter begins with a full color spread featuring both living and deceased characters. We have the likes of Gojo, Geto, as well as Kento Nanami here, and chapter 271 is titled From Here On Out. So the chapter picks up with Megumi, Nobara and Yuji at the apartment of that young couple that we saw them at the end of chapter 270. So Nobara says that she didn't find a cursed seal or a marking anywhere on this girl, as she says that the cursed user who is affecting her vision is probably nearby. Yuji asks if they think that they are in the effective range of the cursed user at the moment, and Megumi says that it's possible, as that technique could be suited for covert work, or they could be extremely skilled with cursed energy, as this situation is proving to be troublesome. Nobara asks the girl whether if she sees her fiance's face go back to normal ever, and she replies that maybe when she's asleep. So Megumi assumes that they're dealing with a range of at least 50 meters, but to be on the safe side they'll say it's 100 meters that the cursed user needs to be near them in order for the technique to be effective. So Yuji asks what should they do now since they are in the middle of town. Megumi agrees that there are people everywhere, and if they check the buildings then there will be way too many blind spots for them, but if they go to a certain viewpoint then they should be able to notice when the curse technique gets activated again. Yuji suggests that they just need to go to an open field. It would be easy to find the culprit that way. Megumi says that yeah, that would work if the guy that they're dealing with is a total idiot. He says that even if the curse technique is broken by getting out of range, you'd have to be a real idiot to show yourself right after that happens. He says that the individual would just wait it out until things cool down and then start their technique again. Nobara suggests that they send the couple away to an all-expenses paid trip, but Megumi says that that probably wouldn't work since the curse user would be able to track their location via his technique, and Megumi suggests that it's probably best not to stalk the stalker. Yuji adds that even if they send them away, the curse user may just reactivate the technique once they come back. Megumi says that this isn't implausible, but by doing so you would put the advantage into the curse user's hands. Yuji is getting pretty frustrated by Megumi's comebacks, and Nobara adds that Megumi is making this curse user out to be like some big-brained individual, as Yuji says that yeah, there are plenty of people more stupider than them. Megumi says that they are going to let the couple leave the range of the technique and then they will strike once the curse technique is reactivated. Yuji says well, this is exactly what they've been saying. Megumi tells them to hold on because that's part of the plan. He says that a 40-floor condo should easily cover 150 meters. He suggests that we'll have them go visit their friend and zip to the top floor to get out of the technique's range, then suggesting that Ichichi-san and a cursed spirit called a window can keep an eye on the buzzer and the entrance. Meanwhile, the three of them will get to a good vantage point and wait for the curse technique to be reactivated. Megumi says that they're dealing with a creep with motivation strong enough to stalk Fukuzawa-san 24 hours a day. Megumi is very confident with this plan as long as the place wasn't wiretapped, and betting on the cursed user not having a technique that allows them to overhear their conversation, everything should be ready for them to catch this stalker. So when the couple get into the elevator and begin ascending the apartment complex, Fukuzawa notices that her fiance's face is returned back to normal. In the next page, we immediately see Nobara identify the cursed user as they ask Nobara who she is, and it seems like the curse technique has been reactivated. Yuji also springs into action, but he uses the curse technique against the two of them, but both of them just look at each other in shock and start laughing. But the curse user is cornered by Megumi's 10 Shadows technique. After apprehending him, they bring him to Fukuzawa and ask her whether if she knows this individual. She says that it's the first time that she's seen him, but he aggressively curses at her, asking her who does she think bought her that bag. So it seems like Fukuzawa used to be a hostess and this curse user was one of her customers and used to spend a lot of money on her when she was a hostess. Nobara says that he spent 1,000,000 yen, asking why would she forget that. Yuji reassures the curse user not to be so upset. It's not like he's going to be executed or anything for what he did. The curse user admits that he was in the wrong and he behaved inappropriately, going as far as to say that he knows how to communicate properly, but despite this he ended up pinning all of the blame on Fukuzawa. It is here where we get a flashback where Yuji thinks back to training with Gojo. Yuji tells Gojo that he thought that after training with Kusakabe sensei, he'd switch up and train with him. Gojo says that he guesses that that would be fine, as he then struggles to word what he's going to say next, as he tells Yuji that haven't they had enough of Gojo sensei for one lifetime. Yuji is surprised surprised, but Gojo tells him that he wants him to be a bit more forward thinking. He wants him to think about the future. Gojo tells Yuji that there is a dream that he wants him to carry on after he is gone, should anything happen to him. He tells Yuji that if this is where he is supposed to bow out, then he hopes that in the future his students mature up even more so than he did. He says that among his students there should be at least one who forgets about him and develops their strength completely different from Gojo's. Yuji says that none of them could ever forget him, and he's surprised, saying that Gojo is really acting out of character here, like he's sounding a bit timid or reserved. Gojo laughs at Yuji and tells him that he's such a kid, as he explains that this is confidence. This feeling of confidence is something that he has never had before. He then tells Yuji that he is expecting great things from him, as he asks Yuji if he understands what he means. If you remember a couple of chapters ago, Gojo had left letters for Nobara and Megumi. It seems like these were the precious words that Gojo had departed with Yuji before he had died. And it's great that we are getting a flashback in the final chapter, and we at least get to see Gojo one more time. After this brief flashback, we cut back to the present, as Yuji tells the curse user that he had acknowledged that he had messed up and that's all that matters, as he tells him to take some time to reflect on what he's done, as he then advises him to come and help them out on their next mission, as he tells this curse user that he's expecting great things from him. So Nobara asks Yuji what did he do with that thing. Yuji says that he tossed it. Nobara's like, what? And Yuji says it's going to be fine, stating that it's not like it's dangerous anymore. He even says that it could be the perfect talisman now. We then cut to a conversation between Mahito and Sukuna, as Mahito tells Sukuna who would have thought that he'd see him here. Sukuna notices Mahito and cockily says that isn't this the second conversation that they are having, in reference to when he had threatened Mahito in the past, when he had dared to touch the soul of Yuji. Mahito says that his technique messes with the soul after all, as he welcomes Sukuna to the pathway that all souls must walk on in order to make their way down the cycle. Mahito says that he meant to ask Sukuna that he was lying, wasn't he, to himself and to others, that he wasn't living according to his own stature. Mahito goes on to tell Sukuna that he wanted revenge against everybody who resented and persecuted that cursed, unwanted little wretch. Mahito appears to be referencing this younger version of Uraume who is standing alongside Sukuna. Sukuna says what difference does it make now? He had lived the only way that he had known how to, and that's exactly how he is choosing to go on. He says actually he did have different paths to walk, two to be precise, but despite this he couldn't help but to spit out the curses that were stirring deep within his body, as he fears that his own curse would burn him from the inside out. He then says that should there be a next time, perhaps it would be nice to walk a different path. Mahito says that that just sounds boring, as he tells Sukuna that he's gone soft. Sukuna says well obviously he's lost everything. In this apparent realm of death, Mahito says that so he's the only one who's left sulking like a child, as even Sukuna has accepted his fate in the afterlife. The next page we see the students from Tokyo Jujutsu High with Yuta and the gang along with Yuji, Megumi and Nobara, and then the final page of Jujutsu Kaisen cuts back to that small shed and we see a box there with Sukuna's middle finger apparently inside this box, and that does appear to be the end of Jujutsu Kaisen. And we have an editor's note here that says thank you so much for reading these past 6 years. Please look forward to Gege Akutami's next work, and that volumes 29 and 30 will be released together on the 25th of December. And that's the end of Jujutsu Kaisen. There's so much raw reaction coming from people from the end of this chapter. There's so much disappointment over a lot of unresolved plot points and a rushed conclusion which a lot of people are feeling, and I can't deny it, even I feel like this ending is unsatisfactory and in some aspects it's very rushed. A lot of us were expecting a finale that gave us closure, that at least had some depth and had wrapped up all of the character arcs in a satisfactory manner, but unfortunately this isn't something that we had at the end of Jujutsu Kaisen. I mean, think about it, we didn't even get a funeral for a character like Gojo. I mean, Jujutsu Kaisen, I'm not writing the entire series off, it certainly has its high points, but the final moments of the story just faltered massively. Some people believe that Kinjaku should have been the final villain of Jujutsu Kaisen, especially if the Culling Games arc, which was a pretty huge story arc, was centered around his plan, but to have him then just gotten rid of, and then the focus of the last 30 chapters of the series being on Sukuna, I felt like it was a bit too heavily focused on him, and in the end it just left Kinjaku's entire character as wasted potential. There was very minimal exploration as to his connection with Yuji, and we didn't get a proper explanation of what his ultimate plan was. Why was he wanting to do the merger? Why did he want to merge all of Japan with Master Tengen? Another point of contention is the death of Gojo. I mean, in these last 5 5 chapters, with the epilogue wrapping up the story of Jujutsu Kaisen, we barely got any mention of Gojo, and this is why people were assuming that he may still be alive. Like, we didn't see a tombstone, we didn't see a funeral, nobody mentioned him directly. Following the aftermath of the battle against Sukuna, it was just really strange. I mean, Nobara returned, Yuta returned, Higuruma also returned, all characters that I thought were definitely dead. So yeah, it was safe to say that we could have expected Gojo to return. I mean, my guy Yuta had his body cut in half and he somehow came back from the brink of death. While Sukuna is a formidable, fearsome villain, the demise of his character felt somewhat anticlimactic. There was this expectation of this grand showdown with Yuji. Finally, Sukuna and Yuji were going to fight, and then everything just ended really abruptly. It's like Gege lit a fuse, and the firework was just about to set off, and then it just fizzled out. As an overall story, Jujutsu Kaisen successfully subverted our expectations numerous times, but it definitely fumbled the bag, I think, with its conclusion. Yuji's character growth throughout the series has been praised by some people, but I don't think that the growth of his character was fully capitalized upon with the ending. His final fight against Sukuna lacked proper weight and depth. There is some solace though. This flashback that we had in chapter 271 was nice, at least, as it further built upon Yuji's relationship with Gojo and the high expectations that he had for his future. And I felt really nice hearing Gojo said that, you know what, he expects great things from him. Yeah, and then the last page, this middle finger of Sukuna, which just feels like Gege giving us fans a middle finger. It's the final reveal. Sukuna's middle finger has left fans feeling divided, understandably. Some people have interpreted this as a hint to a future Jujutsu Kaisen continuation, as this is an open-ended finale. Some are questioning whether if Gege was deliberate in doing this or whether if this is a sign of him having rushed his ending. Yeah, I think with Jujutsu Kaisen, the best way to summarize it is that the journey was great. Like, there were a lot of high moments, but the ultimate destination left much to be desired. I almost forgot to mention this, but Happy News was being promoted alongside the release of the final chapter of Jujutsu Kaisen. People were assuming that it was going to be the reveal of a continuation sequel series of Jujutsu Kaisen, but unfortunately it's just some information that the Jujutsu Kaisen manga has reached 100 million copies in circulation, which definitely is an incredible feat and it deserves a lot of celebration, but it's no Jujutsu Kaisen Part 2, unfortunately. So in terms of the anime, the Hidden Inventory arc anime compilation movie is releasing, and there's going to be a Jujutsu Kaisen stage play in December 2024, along with a Jujutsu Kaisen art exhibition in 2025, along with a new guidebook releasing on the 4th of October 2024. And then yeah, you have the usual stuff like all of the current serialized manga artists in Jump commenting on the ending of Jujutsu Kaisen. But yeah, personally, I'm just really disappointed by the fact that we didn't get to know what Yuji's domain is called. We didn't get to see the full potential of Megumi, which Gojo was teasing throughout the story. We never got to see the complete domain of Megumi. Not one person talked about the death of Gojo following the Shinjuku showdown. We didn't get a backstory for Sukuna. The plot thread of Kinjaku meeting with other country leaders and introducing them to the concept of cursed energy and cursed spirits went absolutely nowhere. These last 5 chapters I felt like could have done so much more, but instead we were catching up with characters from the Culling Game arc, like some of the incarnated sorcerers and even Charles Bernard. I mean, do we really need to see those guys? I'm also really disappointed with the character of Megumi. I had so many high expectations for him. I even had my own headcanon that with his full potential awakened, he could surpass Gojo, but we never really got to see any of that. The ultimate goal of Yuji breaking the cycle of curses was never fulfilled because the students are currently still going on missions, and it seems like this goal just wasn't achieved. It's just a lot to process. The ending of Jujutsu Kaisen has just happened. I'm sure there are going to be a lot of people talking about the rise and fall of Jujutsu Kaisen or how Jujutsu Kaisen fell off. And like I've said in the video, it's not that Jujutsu Kaisen was a terrible series, it's just it fumbled its ending. Gege fumbled Kinjaku's character. We didn't get any Heian era flashbacks, as I really did want to see Sukuna in his prime. We learned nothing new about the Gojo clan, and again the link between Yuji and Kinjaku wasn't properly explored. I do understand with writing stories there are some things that you want to leave to the reader's imagination, but Gege just introduced way too many concepts, which clearly he was planning to expand upon, but in the end he never did. I mean, the story would not have changed one way or the other if these things were were not introduced, because in the end they were inconsequential to the plotline. I mean, do we really need to know that the extended world beyond Japan knows about the existence of cursed spirits and cursed energy? What was the entire point of the Culling Games? For me, Jujutsu Kaisen really peaked during the Shibuya incident arc. That was just a top tier story arc. I loved everything, the way that Sukuna fought against Jogo, the reintroduction of Toji, the demise of Mahito, Yuji losing his mind when he wakes up after Sukuna's rampage. There was just so much that was going well, and then the Culling Games arc kicked off, and then the Shinjuku showdown, and it was all just downhill, honestly. But we've reached the point of the video where I do want to hand over the discussion to all of you. This was chapter 271 of Jujutsu Kaisen, and it was the end of the Shinjuku showdown arc. What do you think about Jujutsu Kaisen as a whole? What were your favorite moments of this series? And do you agree with me that there was a drop in the quality of the storytelling following the Culling Games arc? I do look forward to reading all of your thoughts and to see you all continue the discussion in the comments. At this point, I've covered the entirety of the Jujutsu Kaisen series. I've made videos on every single story arc. I've talked about every character, every ability, and every technique. After having dedicated a lot of time to watching the anime, reading the manga, making videos about this series, it's just disappointing to see the story end in this way. But yeah, let me know what you guys think, and lastly, thanks for making it to the end of this video, and I can't wait to see you in my next video. A massive thank you goes out to all of my amazing Patreon supporters for helping to make this video possible. If you also want to support the channel and see your name in the end of my videos, then check out my Patreon, which has loads of perks like early video access and so much more. Thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.